Hey, welcome back, everybody. Slow news day, slow news weekend, actually, on the Los Angeles Rams front. But one thing I'm going to get back to this episode is comparisons across the NFC West. And I'm going to get away from the players comparison. I've done tight ends, centers, safeties, wide receivers, quarterbacks, bunch of positions. I'm going to look at the defensive coordinators, the four defensive coordinators in the NFC, and try to determine if someone has an edge, if someone has a little bit of a handicap going on at the defensive coordinator job for each of these teams. Hey, it is episode 773 on the podcast, and I'm going to talk about a player who wore number 73 back in the day for the St. Louis Rams, and it was actually offensive lineman Adam Goldberg, 6'7", 309-pound offensive lineman out of Wyoming, went undrafted, 2 years with the Vikings, and then on September 2nd, 2006, the Vikings traded Goldberg to the Rams for a seventh-round pick, the 209th pick overall in the 2008 draft. So Goldberg spent 2006 to 2011 with the Rams, started 48 games. These were the not so great years of the St. Louis Rams. Adam Goldberg had to live through that along with us. But I think he was a decent player. And I always remember Goldberg because he came right after that great career of the wrestler Bill Goldberg. I remember him. That was when my son was into that wrestling stuff, and Goldberg and that Goldberg chant were something else. But Adam Goldberg, no relation. And by the way, I went and looked. What did the Packers do with that draft pick that the Rams traded? Rams traded it to the Vikings, ended up with the Packers. Seventh round pick. Much ado about nothing, really, right? Well, actually, they used that pick to draft quarterback Matt Flynn, I should say, out of LSU, who turned out to be a decent player. If I remember correctly, the Seahawks signed him, and he was going to be the next great thing. And then they also had this guy named Russell Wilson, who ended up beating Flynn out for the starting job in Seattle. So Adam Goldberg is my number 73. I already talked about, I think it was Jimmy Kennedy was the other number 73 I talked about. But there you have it. Hey, the other day, Ian was talking about, I guess there's been a lot of conversations going on about Matthew Stafford and his Hall of Fame credentials. And I don't know if this came out before Ian talked about it. Maybe as one of the things that prompted Ian to talk about this was Rich Eisen going on about Matthew Stafford and how he thinks it's a no-brainer. Rich Eisen does, that Stafford belongs in the Hall of Fame. And, the point Eisen was making is, hey, Stafford had no control over who drafted him. And considering the team he played on, the franchise he led, had a pretty darn good career. And there was a statistic that Ian shared, and it got me thinking. Stafford had 38 regular season game-winning drives for the Lions, and that's a game-winning drive is leading the Lions on a scoring march in the fourth quarter or overtime that gave his team the lead for good. And I mentioned during that video podcast that the Lions didn't win many games, period. And I actually did a data dive on that. The Lions won 74 games with Stafford at quarterback. So more than half of those wins, 38 of them, were due to a fourth quarter or overtime game-winning drive led by Stafford. That's a pretty amazing statistic. And of course, throw in what he did with the Rams so far. I'm starting to. I have been in the Stafford for the Hall of Fame camp for a while. It's another question whether he gets in. I think he does. If he were to retire today, I think he would, and I think he's got a little bit of a story still to write. So I think he ends up in the Hall of Fame. I certainly hope so. I know that's something that he is actually. That's one of the things that is driving him, keeping it, and that's one of the reasons why he chose to stay in LA. I think if he wants to get that gold jacket, He's better off quarterbacking the Rams at this point than the Giants or Steelers or Raiders. I think we could all agree upon that. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. The Rams are the team that has the best shot of getting to the Super Bowl, and it's another title, even a Super Bowl appearance, I think, that'll lock things up for Matthew Stafford as far as the Hall of Fame goes. So we are talking about this trade for TJ Watt, and it got me thinking. What is our draft pick situation for 2026? So we have those 2 first rounders, one belonging to the Falcons. You figure that's going to be a top 15 pick, maybe. And then the Rams pick, which, we're all thinking is going to be the 32nd overall, right? Hey, and maybe that's a reason to give up that pick. If you think you're going to win a Super Bowl, maybe you give up your first round pick this year, or next year, I should say. Then the Rams have their own second, third, and fifth rounder. They do not have their fourth rounder. They traded that away. That was in a trade in this past draft to allow them to move up and draft Ty Hamilton. So they have their own fifth rounder. They have a fifth rounder they got from the Titans. That was the part of the Ernest Jones trade. They have the Texans' 6th round pick. That's part of the Ben Skowronek trade. They have their own 6th rounder, and they have the Ravens' 7th rounder, which was part of the Tre'Davious White trade. And now we get to the Rams' 7th round pick, and I gave up trying to figure this one out. I went to several sources, and nobody seems to know. This is a pick that's been moved around, and conditions set on the pick in various fashions. And let me just say, I don't know. I don't know if the Rams have their own 7th round pick next year. If someone can figure it out, let me know. The 2 sites I went to, 2 reliable sites, were unwilling to make a statement one way or the other. Giant question marks. But I'm not really too concerned about that 7th round pick. The reason I'm talking about this is, what would it take to bring TJ Watt over? And the more I think about it, I was originally opposed to giving up that first round pick, the Rams' first round pick. But if you're making that trade to get to a Super Bowl, well, let me go out on a limb. If you're making that trade and you're giving up a first rounder and let's say a 2nd rounder to get TJ Watt, you're thinking that first rounder is going to be the 32nd pick in the draft, you're hoping, right? So maybe that's not such a bad idea after all. So that's the draft part. And I have no idea what the Steelers would want in return. We'd probably have to throw in a player, and Ian and I talked about that Byron Young would be the candidate, I think. And I hate to see that too, because he has been just a player that's on a rising trajectory, a really good player, but he will be a free agent in 2027. The other part of it is the money. So let's talk about the money here real quick. The 2 accounts I saw, the Rams have around $21 million in cap space, and Watt's current contract is about $21 million, but he wants an extension, and he also wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. So he's got a $21 million contract this year, a $30 million cap hit, and if he's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback, that would have to exceed a Jamar Chase, which would be $40 million a year. So let's go slow on this. I'm not suggesting the Rams are going to pay him $40 million. They pretty much can't unless they do some big, reorganization, extend some of their players of their own, cut a couple of players. And the question is that extension going to start next year? Next year, the Rams have a ton of cap space. So it gets a little complicated. The $40 million, if it was an extension that started next year, I could see the Rams doing it or being able to do it. If it's a contract that kicks in this year, they just have to backload it. But the bottom line is it gets pretty complicated. It's going to eat up a lot, if not all, of the Rams' cap space to get TJ Watt on board. So I don't know. I'm no cap whiz on this. I'd love to have Tom Courts on, someone like that, to give us his insight into this. But bottom line, Rams, $21 million in cap space right now. Watt's current contract, $21 million. His current cap hit, $30 million, and he's looking for $40 million a year. And to get to that $40 million, for the Rams to get to that $40 million for Watt, it would have to be a longer contract, backloaded, and he'll be 31 soon. You're talking about a 35-year-old defensive lineman, making $40-50 million a year in a few years down the road. It may be a contract you end up regretting. And, the Rams have done that before. If they think they can get to the promised land with what looks like kind of a bad trade right now, hasn't stopped them before. They figure it out down the road. So I'm still not a big fan of this, and I understand TJ Watt would take this defense to another level, but we still have a question mark at offensive tackle. Some of us would still say we have a question at cornerback. When I say offensive tackle, Alaric Jackson and DJ Humphries, that thing going on, and we're going out and improving our pass rush. I don't know. Maybe there's an offensive tackle out there that wants out. That would excite me a lot more. But trying to wrap my arms around this TJ Watt situation, the draft capital is there, and throw in a player. From that perspective, the Rams have everything in order to make that trade, I think. The question is the salary cap and Watt's contract demands. I don't know, man. Pretty tough sell for me. And let's talk about NFC West defensive coordinators, and just doing a quick summation of each of the NFC West defensive coordinators. And let's start with Nick Rallis, the Cardinals defensive coordinator, 31 years old. He became the NFL's youngest DC when the Cardinals hired him at 29 years old. Played college football at the University of Minnesota. Took a coaching job with Wake Forest, then the Vikings, and then the Eagles. Then he followed John Gannon from the Eagles to the Cardinals, and he's been their defensive coordinator here for a couple years, and he's known for an aggressive, blitz-heavy style. And the thing with Rallis is, they haven't had the people in place for that defense to succeed, and they went defense heavy in this past draft. So there's going to be some pressure on Rallis to get this defense playing at a high level. It's his defense now. So we'll talk about all these guys at the end here and how they stack up. I'll have another word on Rallis at the end here, but he's certainly a defensive coordinator on the rise, a young guy known for running an aggressive defense. And I thought it was interesting on the Arizona Cardinals website. They talk about how he coached the Cardinals, Budda Baker, to a Pro Bowl. And, I'm sorry, Budda Baker would probably be a Pro Bowler if I was the defensive coordinator there. So not sure how much weight I'm going to put on that. Now, then we have San Francisco's Robert Saleh. And, this is a guy that when he was the defensive coordinator with the 49ers, he did a really good job. Obviously, one of the best defenses in the league. Of course, he had one of the best defensive rosters in the league. But hey, salute to him. I think he's one of the best DCs in the league, coming back to that job after being fired by the Jets. And I'm not happy he's there. The 49ers had some really big questions on defense. They've had a big turnover there. And their one thing they can lean on is they have Saleh back, and he knows how to coach defensive football, and it makes perfect sense that they got him back. He's what that defense needs. Some big holes up front. They got some questions at cornerback as well. Dre Greenlaw's gone. Leonard Floyd is gone. Do they have a pass rush aside from Nick Bosa? And I think Saleh's going to figure it out. So you can do a lot worse than Robert Saleh, one of the best DCs in the league, without a doubt. And then you have Seattle's Aiden Durde. And what's interesting about him is I did not know this. He is the first British born defensive coordinator in league history. He was born in Middlesex, England, and played and coached some football in Europe there. And then came over. He really made his mark as a Cowboys defensive line coach, and then eventually hired by Seattle. And another team who their defense has been a little bit out of sorts. They've had some. They haven't had all the people there to be a really great defense, but they've been building it, and I think they're on the right track. They have a defensive-oriented coach, Mike McDonald, just like the Cardinals do. And we'll have to see. I think he's considered to be a coach that relates well with the players. If you look up details on him, that word details, I used it too early. He is known for just being detail-oriented and being able to coach up players very quickly. So he's another coach that's on the rise. And then there's Chris Shula. His rookie year had some ups and downs, but I think he started to get very innovative as the season went along, started to introduce some of his own concepts, and it was successful. Now, the run defense was horrible at times, but I'm not so sure it was his fault. Again, a team that was missing some pieces, and they've tried to address that. So this is going to be a really big year for Chris Shula. More on that in a moment. But I like Shula as a defensive coordinator, but I think there's a lot of pressure on him. And I'll talk about that as we wrap things up here. What I say about Rallis, I mean, he's just got to prove it. He has the people in place. I'm assuming he has a strong hand in who they're selecting in that draft. Bunch of guys on defense added to that roster. So we'll see. This Cardinals defense seems like every year, offense and defense of the Cardinals, this is the year, man, they look good. This is their year. And then every year they come up short. So they better step up this year after investing so much in defense. I'm not convinced they will, but Rallis is in prove-it mode. Saleh, he's been there, done that, right? I don't think 49er fans should have any concerns from a DC perspective. There's some concerns about the personnel, but hey, who better than Robert Saleh to figure that out? And then Durde, with the Seahawks there, what I have read is that the coach there very defensive coordinated, very defensive oriented, and that's the similarities between the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Jonathan Gannon and Mike McDonald, both defensive-oriented coaches, hire their DCs, and Rallis, I think, has been given a freer hand. Durde, I think McDonald, from what I have read, has been slowly weaning the play calling, defensive play calling, and schematics off to Durde, but the training wheels have to come off at some point, and it's going to be all on Durde to figure this out. They have some good players there. Still some question. I mean, they got Ernest Jones. They got Devin Witherspoon, the great cornerback. Byron Murphy, they drafted last year. Leonard Williams. There's a lot of good pieces there. At some point, Durde, he has to take ownership of this defense, and we'll see what they have. And then for Chris Shula, I think it's just a matter of taking the next step. We saw this defense slowly improve, even in the run, defending the run, although there are still a couple of major breakdowns. I get it, can have that. But, I'm really excited about where Shula can take this defense, but I think there's immense pressure on him. Last year, rookie coach, rookie defensive coordinator, a lot of new people. You're going to give him a grace period to figure things out, and I think we did. And there were early in the year, people were calling for his head. And I said, hey, let's let this guy a little bit of on-the-job training. It's just you just got to go through it. But the difference between him and some of these other coaches is he was hired by an offensive coordinator, a good buddy, an offensive-minded head coach, I should say. Shula, it's his defense. This is his defense, and it's on him. And now this defense, we know the offense is going to be good. We know the offense is going to put some points on the board, and it's on Shula and this defense. They got the players now, maybe a couple of holes, maybe a couple of question marks, but there's no reason this defense can't take the next step and be something close to elite. And so there's a lot of pressure on Shula this year, I think. It's on him to make sure this defense gets to the next level and is a top 12 unit in the league this year. It's got to be better than it was last year statistically from start to finish. Got to stop giving up these 70-yard runs and just getting these monster runs that just blow up your whole game for you. And we'll see what happens. But I think there is an enormous pressure on Chris Shula, but I think he's up to the task. I certainly hope so. I'm really excited about this defense. But if you're looking at these DCs, Sala is the class of the group. And I think Shula, Durde, and Rallis are all in a similar situation. Really young coaches, relatively inexperienced, and a lot at stake, a lot to prove for all three of these guys. But I like the fact that Shula has a year under his belt with some really young players. It's going to be an exciting year for this defense, I think. Out here from Rams Up.